Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful creepy human being you. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's true crime video. I'm so happy we could meet like this. I'm so happy that somehow in all of this that we have going on the day-to-day, today you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or Bratterstein, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing the disappearance and subsequent murder of 15-year-old Becky Stowe. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us, one of us, one of us. And you can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. They are all Bratterstein, but no pressure. Before we get into the story, I need to say a thank you to the company that's partnering with me on today's video, the company that makes it possible for me to put out as many videos as consistently as I do, and that is Ana Luisa Jewelry. Now, if you are not familiar with Ana Luisa Jewelry, don't you worry. You're about to get familiar with Ana Luisa Jewelry. Ana Luisa Jewelry is a jewelry company, that creates high quality pieces at very affordable prices, and they are able to make items, beautiful pieces of jewelry that are this nice at this much of an affordable price while somehow still keeping their impact on the planet in mind by remaining a carbon neutral company. I don't know how they do it. And the best part, well, I don't know if this is the best part because the other part's pretty good too. This is a pretty applicable point for anybody who's looking for jewelry, and that is that they are beautiful. They are so pretty, and they have a variety of styles, so pretty much anybody who's into something can get something that they would vibe with, whether you're a minimalist or a maximalist or somebody who likes things that are just a little bit edgy. They've got you covered at Ana Luisa Jewelry. So today I have 4 items, 4 pieces to share with you, and I got these in the mail a couple of days ago, and I've been waiting. I want to wear them, right? I want to wear them all the time, but I never take them out of the box until I do the video, because what if I lose one? What if my stupid brain walks outside, I get it caught on something, it rips it from my ear, it gets lost? You know, I've been wanting to wear these pieces because some of my favorites that I've ever gotten are in here, and I'm so excited to show you. So let me show you now. The first pair I have to show you today are the Ashleys, and when I tell you, these are so pretty. The little pearls on the side, if you don't know, pearl is my favorite. I don't know if pearl is a gemstone, but I consider it as such because it is a precious thing that comes from the earth. Well, it comes from the water, whatever. They're beautiful, and I cannot wait to put these on. I'm so excited. Let me put them in right now. Okay, these are the Ashleys, and oh my god, they're so beautiful. These are arguably too beautiful for me, because like I'm a gutter person, but let me tell you, I am obsessed with these. I feel like these would be really perfect at, like, let's say I went somewhere. Let's say I left my house and I went to like a Christmas party. These would be the earrings for it. And you know what? Here's the thing. Maybe they are too beautiful for me as a human, but I'm going to fake it till I make it. I'm going to wear these all the time because look at how cute they look, especially with my little C's, which are also Ana Luisa, but they're not part of this video. They're just part of my daily life, you know? But look at that. The next pair I have to show for you are called the Mother of Pearl, and I have had my eyes on these for so long because I'm one of those women who likes heart-shaped jewelry. Don't listen to Pam Beasley because she is wrong here. These are so pretty. Let me show you. Oh my god. Look at how cute those are, and look at how nice they look next to the Ashleys because they both have that like pearly white sort of color to them, right? They're so cute, and what's really cool about these actually, which I didn't mention before, the danglies, is they're not just like on the piece here, they're actually built in so they won't fall off. That is a very good thing if you're a person like I am. Now let me show you the next one. Okay, this is the next pair. I didn't even show them to you on the card because I got so excited to put them in. These are my favorite by far. These are called the Fae. They're little chain link, and they look so cute with the pearl, and I actually like them together because they're kind of, what is it? The juxtaposition between the two is very juxtaposed. Anyways, they just look really cool. I'm a big fan, and if you like things that I like, you would like them too, and that's basically that on that. Now let me show you the last pair, which are so pretty. I picked these out, and I've had these in my on my wish list for quite some time, so let me show you. So these are called the Harmony, and look at how stinking cute those are. They're so dainty and small. For some reason, they remind me of this movie that I saw when I was younger, and they just give me all the feels. And I've been wanting a new, like, everyday earring for this hole, because I love my moons, don't get me wrong. But, you know, I just want to switch it up, and these, I feel like, are perfect for that. I think they're going to look really good with the C's that I wear every day, and I just think that they're stunning. And I think I'm going to keep this combo in for the rest of the video, because it looks so pretty together. Anyways, guys, now that I've shown you my new pieces, I have some good news for you. So if you like sustainable jewelry at an affordable price with their jewelry starting as low as $39, let me tell you something. If you click the link in my description box and use the code BRATTERSTEIN20 at checkout, you will get 20% off your new favorite piece of jewelry today, right? And I can't see why that wouldn't be like a super good deal. Like, it is a good deal, A. And B, I can't imagine that you're not going to find something you love, because, I mean, as I've demonstrated, even what I'm wearing right now, there really is something for everyone. So if all of that sounds as good to you as it does to me, make sure to click the link in my description box to let Ana Luisa know that I'm the one that sent you, and use the code BRATTERSTEIN20 at checkout to get 20% off your new favorite piece or pieces of jewelry today. And now I just want to say a big thank you to Ana Luisa Jewelry for wanting to work with me on yet another video, and a big thank you to you guys for always being so supportive of all of my sponsors. You rock. Don't ever change. Alright guys, now that I'm done spreading the good word of Ana Luisa Jewelry, we can get into this video. Now this video is another subscriber suggestion. This video, yes, very good. This video was suggested by a member of the Brat Pack named Ayla. Hi Ayla, thank you. Ayla, God, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. A-Y-L-A. Got you. I tried. Basically, this is another hometown suggestion. This happened in her hometown, and I've been finding, as I've said in previous hometown videos, that I find this to be a very productive use of my channel space, bringing attention to cases that I had never heard of before, therefore perhaps many of you have never heard of before, and it helps us, all of us, the masses of the members of the Brat Pack, be able to remember these victims. With that said, today I'm bringing you a case out of Niles, Michigan, and this is a sad case with a very in-ideal ending, which obviously all the cases we cover do have in-ideal endings, unless we're talking about a survivor story, right? Like, that's just the nature of the beast that is true crime. But with this one in particular, it's very frustrating, especially because of the resentencing of Becky's murderer, but we will get there. So today I'm going to tell you the entire story. I read all of the things so that you do not have to. And at the end of this video, after you've heard all the information, I want you to answer the question of the day, and that is this: what do you believe was the motive for Becky's murder? Now, with all of that said, come gather around and let me tell you the story of the disappearance and subsequent murder of 15-year-old Becky Stowe. Now, I want to start this video off with a quote. And this is a quote from the prosecutor who later prosecuted Becky's case. And I found this particular quote to be chilling, relevant, and I think it's a good way to kind of get an idea of where this case is heading, okay? The prosecutor said in Becky's case, and I quote, "This kid is a sociopath. He has no conscience whatsoever. Therefore, if he felt he needed to kill, he'd do it again." With that said, we're now going to jump in our handy-dandy time machine, and we're going to head to 1993 in Niles, Michigan, which is a small town just north of the Indiana border. And in 1993, this place was described as a Midwestern vanilla sort of town that nothing was going on in, but they were close to a lot of areas where things were happening. This is where 15-year-old Rebecca Lynn Stowe, who went by Becky Stowe, lived with her mother Diana and her mother Diana's boyfriend Steve. Now, Diana worked in factories, so she was gone a lot of the time, which left Becky alone often, but she was like an independent type of teenager, so she didn't really mind this. Her mom was working as hard as she could, putting in all the hours that she could to make sure that she could support her family and keep a roof over their heads. So this just left Becky home alone a lot, or home alone with her boyfriend Steve a lot. Now, Steve and Becky's mom had been together a long time. I read that they were together when Becky was only 3 years old, though they had moved in together a little more recently, but either way. Steve had been in the picture a really long time, so he had become sort of a father figure to Becky. And from everything that I read, it seems like when they were younger, well, yeah, they were younger, but when Becky was younger, they got along better, right, than they did in her teenage years. From what I've gathered, Becky found Steve to be a rather strict person. I didn't find anything that said that he was actually stricter than the average father bear. I did hear that, like, there was a lot of tension between the two of them, particularly as Becky became a teenager. I mean, she was 15 when the story took place, and that's totally normal for things to get pretty rocky between a teenager and her parents, or, what's the word? The adults controlling her life, right? Right. So as I said, Becky and Steve butted heads quite often. And on one of these occasions, one of these severe head-butting matches, Becky decided, you know what? This has been real. It hasn't been real good, but it's been real, you know what I mean? I've been here for a long time, not a good time, basically. And she's like, I'm going to go. I'm going to go and I'm going to spend the night at my friend's house, which was Jacqueline, who went by Jackie. And Becky did just that. She got all of her things and she headed over to Jackie's house. Now, this is a thing that, fight or no fight, she probably would have ended up doing on many evenings regardless, because though Jackie and Becky hadn't known each other a very long time, not like years and years or anything, they were the type of friends that met and immediately became very close and were together constantly. Anyways, Becky is at Jackie's, she's spending the night, but Jackie actually ends up leaving and she goes to spend the night with her then boyfriend, now husband, love, Todd. So Jackie's with Todd. I guess Todd was going to be going away for a couple of days and Jackie was supposed to go with him but wasn't going to go with him, so they wanted to spend some time together. So she goes, she stays at Todd's. The next day, her and Todd head back to her home to meet up with Becky. I guess this was totally, I don't know if this would be normal for everybody, but I have had friends like this that would just be at my house hanging with my parents when I'm not there. Like when I moved from my hometown to LA, my best friend Ashley still went and visited and hung out with my mom all the time. So it was a totally normal thing to me reading, but in case it's not a normal thing for you, for me this is normal. So Jackie leaves, she's at Todd, blah, 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 comes back home the next day, expecting to find Becky at her house. They get there at about 1 p.m., a little after 1 p.m., and they find that Becky is gone. But she had clearly just been there because, like, the music was on, I think the TV was on, the laundry was going, the curling iron was still plugged in, and there was still steam on the bathroom window, but she was nowhere to be found. Now, this could be seen as a bit weird, right? Like, I would feel like I'd be a little bit weirded out why, like, my friend just seemed to have upped and vanished while leaving everything on. But then again, teenagers are kind of sometimes inconsiderate little shits. So anyway, she's walking through the home and she quickly gets an answer to her question of, like, where's Becky? And that's when she finds a note, and it appears to be written in Becky's handwriting, and it just says, went to see Rob. Now, Rob was Becky's then sort of boyfriend, and he lived a short ways from Jackie's house, so Becky was known to walk over there, so it wasn't a big deal to her. She's like, okay, cool, she'll be back shortly. Like, Rob has a busy schedule, they're not going to hang out all day. Everything is chillin', right? Everything's cool. But then she finds out that she is wrong and things are not very super duper cool when Rob calls Jackie's house asking for Becky. Naturally, Jackie's response is, what the fuck? Like, she's not with you. She's supposed to be with you. And Rob's like, no, like, I haven't seen her. She was supposed to come over, but she hasn't been here yet. So that is why I'm calling. So at this point, Jackie panics a little bit because Becky's gone. She's not at her house. She's not at Rob's house. And she didn't take any of her stuff. Her wallet, her money, and her cigarettes were left at Jackie's house. So Jackie's like, okay, I'm going to call Becky's mom. So she calls Becky's mom, Diana, and she's like, hey, have you seen her? She's missing. And they talk a little bit and they decide not to freak out, not to panic right away. They were going to get together and they were going to go look for her. So they do just that. Jackie and Diana get together. They drive around. They look for her. They call everyone they can think of. They go to every place they can think of. They call family. They call friends. They call everyone. Okay? And nobody has heard from her. So after 8 hours and nobody seeing her, she was reported missing. Because though Becky would leave, I mean, she did. She left her home to go stay at Jackie's. She would go away. She would always contact somebody, so this was out of character. The first arriving officer said that she generally dealt with a lot of runaways. So when she heard Becky's story and heard what happened, that's what she thought the situation was at first, like a first glance. But Becky's mom just was not having it, because if Becky was going to run away, and that was like a big if in her mind, she knew that Becky would go and stay with her older sister, because her older sister's house was like her safe haven, a place that she could go and know that everything would be safe. Safe haven. Thank you, Brittany. But Becky's older sister, Cindy, had not heard from her either. And that let them know that something was seriously wrong here. And they were right, because Becky would never come home again. She would never be seen alive again. She had gone missing on that day in July 13th, 1993, which was just 2 days before Becky's mother's birthday. Now, police realize they need to locate Becky. She's 15 years old. She's missing. Nobody's heard of her, heard from her. And, you know, the story doesn't end well, right? It doesn't sound like it's going to end well. But before they can answer the question of where is Becky, they need to first answer the question of who is Becky. Becky Stowe was a 15-year-old sophomore at Brandywine High School who was just very typical in a lot of ways. She was always smiling, joking, having fun. The seriousness of life hadn't weighed on her yet, you know, and she was just the type of girl who could make any horrible situation fun, even if that horrible situation was having a long trip to a concert and camping trip canceled on account of rain. She was the type of girl to just stand outside, smiling in the rain, making friends with others whose weekends were seemingly ruined. Described as bubbly, smart, funny, and outgoing, the life of the party, not quite a girl, but not yet a woman. She was always on the phone, always with friends. She made a lot of home movies with her friend Jackie, where they just hang out and have a lot of fun, you know. Her favorite color was green, and her dream was to get a green Jeep and drive along the beaches in California, which, even as a California native, I can understand that fantasy. I can picture it in my head, but unfortunately, none of this would happen for Becky because her life was cut short when she was just 15 years old. She never even got a driver's license. Becky's sister Cindy said of her, and I quote, "Becky was vibrant. She was a little bit on the wild side. I mean, she was very adventurous." Becky was really close with her family, her mother, Diana, and her sister Cindy, who was 11 years older than her. And her mom were described as having, her and her mom were described as having the type of relationship I think I had with my mom. Like, when I was reading about it, I was like, I feel that very much. Because Becky could tell Diana anything, right? They were open enough that they had a dialogue going back and forth. She probably got to the point where she told her mom stuff that she's like, you know what, I don't really need to know that. Because I remember being a teenager and telling my mom one particular thing that I had done, and my mom was like, okay, here's the thing. I love that you're sharing, but there are some things that I just don't need to know. And I feel like Becky and her mom had that kind of relationship too. But what often comes with those types of relationships, just very, very closeness, almost friends in addition to being like mother and child, is that they argued a lot. I mean, this could be said about any relationship with any parent, but they argued a lot. They butted heads a lot, and sometimes it would get kind of intense, which again, I can totally relate to, because when I was a teenager, me and my mom had like raging fights. But despite that, they were all still very close. They would do a lot of things together. They would do a lot of things, particularly like on summer breaks together. They lived pretty close to Lake Michigan. I think it was only like a 30-minute drive. So during the summer, they would go there and spend like all day at the beach, which I think is just like the lake, but like you're in Michigan, so the beach. Unless like all lakes have beaches, which I don't know because I'm not from a lake side community. Anyway, she and her sister would just do a lot of outdoor activities, is basically what I'm saying. She was very extroverted. She was friendly to everyone and loved to have fun and to laugh. She was just like any teen girl. She had her boyfriends and she had her crushes, and she was considered, quote, rebellious. And Jackie kind of confirmed this, saying that she was a bit on the rebellious side, and that she and Jackie were doing things that she wouldn't want her own 15-year-old son to be doing. But at the same time, the things that Jackie was saying about them was that they were kind of like goth kids. There was like the preps and the jocks and the alternative kids, and they were kind of the alternative kids, but they were the type of kids that were friends with everyone, and that they would have parties from here and there from time to time, and that at these parties there was alcohol and cigarettes, and that Becky and she partook, which is like, okay, is it good for a 15-year-old to be smoking and drinking? No, but when I think about who I was as a kid versus who I turned into as an adult, and I think about the things that I did as a teenager, I'm like, it's not like that bad. I'm not saying if you're 15 to do it, because I'm not saying if you're 15, don't do it. I'm just saying like there are also worse things I could do, you know what I mean, than be with a boy or two. But maybe I'll feel differently when Charlie's older. But if you are 15, don't do those things, is basically what I'm saying. But this video is also marked as not suitable for kids, so there you go. Other friends that were close to Becky said that they wouldn't describe her as a troublemaker exactly. They just said that she was the type of girl who had to grow up faster than necessary, than would be ideal in some ways, but was still a kid in a lot of other ways. The summer before she turned 16 years old, Becky was said to have started to change a little bit. The former tomboy was starting to turn more into like a young lady. I guess when she was like 10 or 11, she was more rough around the edges, more into like traditionally boy things. Like she liked baseball and basketball and going to Lake Michigan and going camping and barbecuing, all of the outdoorsy type stuff. But now that she was getting a little bit older, she liked things that were more young lady, like she was a little more girly. She started painting her nails, doing her hair, doing her makeup. She even got herself a boyfriend named Robert. Becky's sister Cindy said that Becky was super excited to have a boyfriend and was very excited for it to be Rob in particular. I guess Rob was like the hottie. He was like the crush of the moment, and Becky had landed him. And it was said that she was also like a little bit starstruck by him just because of like the status difference in who they were at school. Like he was a very popular football playing jock and she was a little alt girl that didn't get looked at as much by the popular kids. So when this hot, I don't see it. Personally, not my type. When this hot jock started paying attention to her, she got very enamored very quickly, and I guess the relationship moved pretty fast. So things seemed to be going good for Becky, right? She had this new boyfriend, she had good friends, she had maybe like an ideal home life, but not more than like the average teenager, right? So where did she go? What happened to her? Now, during the investigation into the who was Becky, right? The important question that you need to answer in order to help you find her. Police did learn something about her that could, not necessarily does, but could have something to do with what happened to her. And that's that they found out that at 15 years old, Becky was pregnant. Okay, I guess what happened, well, obviously she got pregnant. She was suspecting that she was pregnant. So her and Jackie, they went together and they went to Kmart. They bought a pregnancy test, probably looked in the makeup section and saw the Maybelline Matte Mousse foundation because that's what everybody was using. Bought the pregnancy test, left, went to Burger King. Don't know why they didn't use the bathroom at Kmart. Maybe it was not available to anyone, because I was going to say anyone who didn't buy something, but they did buy something. Anyway, went to Burger King, went into the stall, took the pregnancy test, and it was positive. And Jackie says that Becky was stoked. Like, she was really excited to have a baby. I cannot imagine being excited to have a baby at 15. I was excited to have my son, but the idea prior to being pregnant, the idea of being pregnant prior to me getting pregnant, even at 33, was like, absolutely fucking not. That's terrifying. So being excited at 15, hey, go her. Maybe she was somebody who always wanted a kid. She said that Becky was just excited to have somebody new in her family to love, which was like, it got me right there. Now, Jackie did say that Becky was nervous to tell her mom because I've already explained how their relationship was. They were very close. So at one point, Diana had actually taken Becky to get birth control so that she could be safe with what she was doing. And in the process of going to get the birth control, like, you're talking about stuff, right? You're not just going, like, you're talking about why you're going, right? And Becky had asked her, like, hey, Mom, what would you do if I got pregnant right now? Like, how would you feel? What would you want me to do? And her mom told her that at this point in her life, if she was to get pregnant, she would suggest Becky get an abortion. In learning this, police are like, oh, maybe that's why she's gone. Maybe she did leave on her own. Because remember, they're kind of operating under the assumption that she ran away. So they're like, oh, maybe that's why she left. Maybe she was afraid of how her mom would react if she was pregnant, so she didn't want her to know. Or maybe she's hiding out to kind of wait out the period till it's too late to get an abortion so she can just come back and be like, well, there's nothing we can do about it. I'm just going to have this baby. But her mom was still not really feeling that and was actually pretty upset. She was upset to learn that Becky wouldn't have told her or told her sister Cindy, which is sad because there's nothing that can be reconciled now. But she also said that it just made her sad because even though she had said that she would want her to get an abortion, and even though there had been tension between the two of them, she would have been supportive of whatever Becky wanted to do. Now, even though the police were kind of operating under the theory that she might have run away, that she might have been afraid of the repercussions of her pregnancy. Maybe she was afraid to tell the father, afraid of how her mom might react, just kind of waiting out, right? Her family was like, I don't really think that's the case, and let me tell you why. It sounds like bullshit for a couple of reasons. One, she didn't take anything. She didn't take her wallet. She didn't take her money. She had $60 in her wallet. These are things that, I don't know, she might need if she was going somewhere. And on top of that, should you be smoking when you're pregnant? Abso-fucking-lutely not. However, she's 15. 15-year-olds aren't making good decisions. And she didn't take her cigarettes. And she was described as a girl who smoked a pack a day. And she smoked a pack a day of fucking Newports. Okay, those are strong cigarettes. She wasn't going in. If you've been a smoker or you've known a smoker, somebody who smokes a pack a day, you're not going anywhere without your cigarettes, and definitely not going anywhere without money to buy more cigarettes. Investigators did start to kind of agree with her family that there was more to it when after 2 days Becky had still not shown up. So they started to take it a bit more seriously, but unfortunately they had lost those 2 days where that is the most important time to be looking. But this is common and unfortunate, but we hear about it all the time. So now that police are like, okay, we should probably get down to business, they decide that they want to talk to Rob. The first person they want to talk to is Rob for a couple of reasons. One, The letter literally said that she was going to talk to Rob, right? It said going to talk to Rob. So duh, that's a good place to start. And they had confirmed with another friend, I believe this friend's name was Portia, that in addition to writing the note to Jackie saying she was going to go talk to Rob, she had actually been talking to Portia on the phone and was like, you know what I'm going to be doing? I'm going to be going and talking to Rob. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that Becky was said to be pregnant and he was her boyfriend. So there's a good chance that he might be the father, right? Right. So the cops head over to Rob's house. When they get there, they knock on the door. He answers the door and he's like, oh, my mom's not here. Because, you know, they're like, is your mother home? Because we need her here to question you because you are a child. Because he was 16. And he was like, no, she's not here. But if you want, she's going to be home soon. I don't know why I'm doing the Morty voice, but I did. Anyway, he's like, she's going to be home soon. So if you want to come in and wait, like, that's chill. We can sit here and wait for her. And then when she gets here, you can question me. Like, I'm cool with that. And she's like, cool, cool, cool. The cop. I'm down with that sickness. So she comes in, the cop. And they sit and they talk, and she says Rob's super chill. They just sit and then they chat. He's totally calm, totally relaxed. His mom gets home. They question him. They do the whole interview, and during the interview, he tells the police that, yes, him and Becky had been intimate, but it had only been one time. They had used a condom, and they had been on birth control. So when they hear this, she hears this, she's like, huh, well, maybe Becky had been intimate with somebody else then, and maybe this wasn't Rob's kid, you know? And it turns out Becky had been intimate with, like, one other person. But by all accounts, everyone said that Becky thought the baby was Rob's. Like, they talked to her friends, anybody who she had told about it, they all said, like, she 100% believed the baby was Rob's. And they even tracked down the other person she had been intimate with, and they questioned him. And he even thought the baby was Rob's. She had told him that she was pregnant and said that the baby was Rob's. And they actually looked into this guy, and they checked him out, and he did have an alibi, and he was cleared. On top of that, on top of, you know, everyone thinking it was Rob's, it turns out that Rob and Becky had more sex, had sex more times than he was saying, right? Like, he was definitely minimizing their relationship a little bit. You know, he could be scared because he's being interviewed by police, but it turns out that Becky had a journal where she kept, you know, her private thoughts and also details of her private life, and Jackie ended up giving this to police to help with the investigation. And inside there, she had like a log where she would put little stars next to the days where she had been banging, and based on this log, they were able to determine that they had sex a few times, not just one time, like Rob said. So they asked him at this point if he knew that she was pregnant, because they had just asked if they were, like, intimate. They didn't bring up the baby yet. So they're like, listen, did you know that she was pregnant? And did you know you were thought to be the dad? And he's like, you know what? Yeah, I did. I did know that. And I actually did try to get her to get an abortion, because I'm like, I'm just really not down with that baby sickness. It's not really my thing. And then he also admitted to the police that he was a lot more casual about the relationship than Becky was. This dynamic, where, you know, Becky was more serious than Rob was... What? Yeah, that's right. The dynamic of Becky being more serious about the relationship than Rob was also confirmed by her friend Jackie. She said that Becky was just really, really into Rob. He was considered her first puppy love, and she just took the relationship very seriously, and she took intimacy in general very seriously. She even said in a home video of intimacy, and I quote, "I hate it when guys sleep with a girl and then that's it. You see, they try for weeks to get it, and then after they get it, they're just like, pff, gone." But Jackie confirmed that Rob just wasn't like that with her. He didn't take her seriously. He didn't take her on dates, no dinners, no movies, no meeting the parents, nothing. Rob kind of implied that he was too good for Becky, that he had been sort of slumming it by dating her, slumming it by dating someone on the other side of the track, somebody that he considered to be beneath him, which is fucking rude, first off. And also, doesn't it remind you, or maybe this is just me, of Pretty in Pink and Blaine? Like, Blaine, what kind of name is that? What kind of a name is Blaine? That's the name of an appliance. It's not a name. You know what I mean? Like, that's the vibes I get, and it makes me annoyed because that's fucking rude. Rob. Blaine. Rob. Rob was described as the all-American boy. He was handsome, popular, played on the football team. And Rob and Becky actually did seem like an odd pairing because Rob was this picture-perfect high school jock and Becky was a bit of a rebel. She didn't play by the rules. She liked to question authority and, you know, she smoked her pack a day. Girl, I was the same way in high school. I feel it so hard. And this made him apparently think he was better than she was, which again, I just find to be very annoying. Anyways, I feel like I've been talking about him a lot, but like he was an important part of the investigation, so I'm just going in on talking about him. So during the interview, interrogation, whatever you want to call it, I think it was just an interview, he tells them that, like, yes, he was supposed to see Becky. He was supposed to see her on his lunch break because he has 2 jobs, and that was the only time that he had free between his 2 jobs during the day. And then every other part of the day, he had been with somebody else, so he had like an alibi, and that he had no idea where Becky could be. They talked at length, him and police, about his alibi and about Becky, and he said that he did some work landscaping in the morning, then was with family in the afternoon, and then went to his second job in the evening where he worked as a busboy. When discussing his relationship with Becky, he said that she was just sort of his like flavor of the month because he had a girlfriend. He had a serious girlfriend who was away in New York. So he had his New York girl and his hometown girl. Just like Michael Scott with Jan and the real estate lady. His like main girlfriend was like a pretty popular cheerleader who was in the grade above Becky. And this was the girlfriend he took really seriously. She had been brought home to meet the parents and have dinner with the parents. You know, she was the one who had went to family reunions, went on family vacations. She was the one intertwined in his life. Like, this was his serious girlfriend. Serious, even though he is cheating with Becky. So during the whole interview, Rob was super calm, cool, and collected, seemingly not nervous at all. Not even when police decided to take him to the station, the police headquarters, and give him a polygraph test. Apparently the person administering the test was like super good at their job, and Rob passed the test. He was said to have no knowledge about Becky's disappearance and not be responsible for her death. So with a solid alibi and passing a polygraph test, police had no reason not to believe that he was telling the truth and move on, because even though sometimes, you know, it's always the boyfriend, it's always the partner, but in some cases, the most obvious answer is not the correct answer. They believed that was the case here, and they moved on. So from there, police are like, okay, we need to look at some more suspects. We need to move on with our investigation. And they move on to one of the earlier people of interest. And this was actually Jackie's boyfriend, Todd. So Jackie and Todd were dating. Obviously, it was her boyfriend because they were dating. But they were like a new couple. They had started dating that summer, and Becky was sort of like a third wheel for them because Becky and Jackie were always together. So that meant Becky and Todd were always together. I guess Jackie would sometimes like ditch Todd for Becky because that was like her girl. You know, that's how it goes sometimes. And I guess Jackie was even supposed to go with Todd on a trip to Myrtle Beach, like right around the time that Becky disappeared, but decided not to go, to stay with Becky. And that was actually happening like right after Becky disappeared. That's why Jackie was staying with Todd the night before Becky disappeared, because he was going to be going to Myrtle Beach without her. So they wanted to spend some time together before he went. And that's why Becky was alone and able to like leave and disappear, basically. Not like that's why she was able to disappear, but that's why Becky was alone, because Jackie was with Todd, blah, 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 blah. I guess police wanted to get a hold of him right after Becky disappeared, but they weren't able to because he had like upped and left to go party in Myrtle Beach, and police were like, that's fucking suspicious, even though it was like a planned trip. But still, they were like, we need to talk to this guy. So they actually ended up tracking him down and questioning him and like searching his car, and he didn't seem to have any sort of connection. But even his girlfriend then, who is now his wife, but at the time, I'm glad they were able to get past all this, but at the time, even she was suspicious, and she called him and she's like, listen, I just need you to tell me, like, if she's with you, just tell me. I just need to know that she's okay. Like, she was so worried about her friend that she was just kind of suspicious of everybody. She like called him like wanting answers, wanting the truth, and he was like she's not with me. I'm sorry. Like it sucks. I understand you're scared, but she's not here. And I guess this poor guy, like even Becky's mom Diana was like, I need to make sure it's not you. Like, I'm sorry, but I need to make sure it's not you. So she went to his house and she was like, I want to look in the trunk of your car. I want to look in your basement. And he was like, okay, that's fine. And he let her look wherever she wanted to. He let her go wherever she wanted to. And he said he did this because he understood. He understood how upset and stressed and scared he was about Becky's disappearance, because that was, you know, his friend. So he could only imagine how hard it was on her mother. So he just wanted to let her do whatever she felt like she needed to do. Now, Todd did end up being ruled out, like, because he wasn't involved. But I can't even imagine how scary that was for him at the time where he was suspected, because it just seems like it'd be a scary thing to be suspected of something you didn't do, for one. And I don't really understand why he was suspected. I feel like I missed something there. I know that the cops were saying that, like, it was possible that he had dropped Jackie off and, like, met Becky down the road and picked her up to go to Myrtle Beach, and that they were just hiding it. But still, I just felt it was kind of weird, and it was kind of a long shot, but he was suspected, and here we find ourselves, and he was ruled out. So that was that. So police were like, okay, we need to move on. It's not Rob. It's not Todd. So let's, widen our search a little bit, or rather, let's tighten it in a little bit and look in the family. They wanted to look at the dynamics in the household because they knew it had been tense. So they do that. They look in and they find out right away, like, that Diana's not involved at all. Like, she was working at a job at the factory. She was out of the house. She was completely ruled out right away. But her boyfriend, Steve, wasn't. Police find themselves very interested in Steve and very interested in the relationship between Becky and Steve that was described as tense and sometimes even hostile. They were like, that is sketchy. And on top of that, Steve actually didn't really have an alibi for when Becky disappeared. He normally worked, like this was a scheduled day for him to work, but he had took the day off sick. And apparently he had never taken a day off sick. And he had nobody to account for what he had been doing at home during that time. He said he was just home, alone, sick, as one is, and was just hanging out watching movies. He said he watched the Helter Skelter movie, and that was that, but nobody could confirm this. And on top of that, he was also not at work the following day, a time when he could have presumably gotten rid of Becky's body if he was involved. And police were like, you don't have an alibi for this day either? And he was like, no, I don't. And so police start thinking that it's possible Steve moved in with Diana and Becky when Becky was a teenager, and they thought it could be possible that Steve was trying to get close to Diana so he could get close to Becky, and that Steve might have been abusing Becky, and that the baby she was carrying wasn't Rob's, but Steve's. Now, Diana was convinced that Steve was not involved, at least at first. She would try to look for different theories, alternative theories. She would go out and search for her everywhere. She would go to like abandoned buildings and just look in windows. She did like everything she could to try to find her daughter. And apparently Steve was really big on these searches also. He would go with her to look in all these different places, and he was convinced that her friends knew something more. He would talk to Diana all the time about how they were lying and how they knew more and da-da-da-da. And that might even be why Todd ended up on Diana's radar so hard, because Steve was like really pushing this, and the police came to believe that he was pushing so hard on all this to kind of push everyone off his track, essentially. Police said Steve was really, really weird about Becky's disappearance. He would say weird things and come up with weird theories and just act very anxious about the entire thing. He would even go as far as like, he'd be driving around and he'd see what he thought was like a freshly dug grave, and he would go and like dig this grave up thinking it was possible that Becky could be there, and it would always turn out to be like an animal or nothing at all. But he would always bring all of this information to police over and over, and they again thought he was trying to push them in a direction other than himself. Detectives were suspicious of Steve, so they actually put him under surveillance and they watched him when Becky first disappeared, but he didn't do anything that like made their ears perk up. I guess it would be like their eyes perk up since they were watching him. He did nothing of note that led them into anywhere new, but they were still like, I don't know, man. I don't know about you, my guy. There's still something off here. So they asked Steve, they are like, hey, would you be willing to take a polygraph test? And how do you think that Steve responded? By saying, absolutely, yes, I would like to do anything that would help rule me out so that you could start looking in the right place to try to uncover my pseudo daughter, right? False. Instead, he said, no, I won't be doing that. He went home, he packed all of his shit, and he moved out of the home he shared with Diana without saying anything to police or to her. Police said there was not a single thing he could have done to make himself look more guilty in that moment. Instead of, not only did he refuse a polygraph test, which like you should, first off, like refuse a polygraph test, get a lawyer always, but he refused a polygraph test, and then moved out of his house. Him and Diana had been together 12 years. And he up and left without saying a word to her. This made everyone think that police were on the right track in suspecting Steve, right? Because this was already weird, and prior to that, all the shit he had done was just bizarre when it came to her case. I guess at one point, him and Diana had gotten like word that Becky might be down in Myrtle Beach, right? So they actually go down there to search for her. And when they're doing so, Diana's like, well, what if she's down there and she ran away and she's just down there partying and having fun? And then we get there and she sees us and she runs from us again. And Steve was like, oh, she'd never escape me. And it just was one of those things he said that really stuck out to Diana. And you know what? Just real quick, since I mentioned Myrtle Beach, I've got to tell you a little bit about this trip because, oh my God, it's heart-wrenching. So Diana and Steve made this drive. It was a 15-hour drive to Myrtle Beach. And when they got there, they searched everywhere for Becky. Diana really did the most to try to find her daughter. They posted her flyer everywhere. They showed her picture to everyone they came in contact with. They went and talked to local police. They went to local homeless shelters, but they found nothing. Diana said that her and Steve would go to the boardwalk and just sit there and watch and wait in case maybe she showed up and was just walking around and they would see her on the off chance, right? Like they'd on the off chance see her. You know what I'm saying? And she said that they would go and hide in the bushes outside of homeless shelters in case Becky was trying to hide from them and showed up there trying to get food. And what's like really heartbreaking to me is before her and Steve left Myrtle Beach, she left messages for Becky written in various places where she might show up, like in chalk. She would write these big messages that would just say like, Becky, please come home. Becky, please at least call. Love, Mom. And that just like got me. She was like, maybe she would just show up at these places and see this and then I'd just have some answers. So anyways, back to Steve. They're saying that he's acting super suspiciously, but he is also being blamed for her murder at this point. Like, police told him, like, we know you killed her, and we're gonna figure it out, and da-da-da-da, we know it was you, my guy. And at this point, he was like, oh, well, if that's the case, I don't want to thugs with you or help you anymore. So when he was asked to take a polygraph test, I guess at first he actually did say yes. He's like, sure. Then he went, got an attorney. The attorney called the police and was like, yeah, no, he's not gonna be doing that. And it was at this point that Diana started to suspect him as well. She was just confused. She was like, if you're innocent, like, why would you not take the test? This doesn't make sense to me. And he said that he had just heard about innocent people flunking it and, you know, it getting them into some trouble, which again, don't take a polygraph test because he's not wrong. That's the thing, is he is not wrong. Of course, it makes you look guilty. Anytime you hear it, you're like, But it is the thing that the right choice is what he did, but then the wrong choice is for him to then up and move to Ohio. He literally just moved to Ohio, and I guess at first police didn't know he was in Ohio, on Ohio, like on Maui. Anyways, police didn't know he was in Ohio initially, so they looked for him for months. When they finally found him, they put him under surveillance again. They even went as far as following him on the 1-year anniversary of Becky's disappearance, hoping that this anniversary might make him want to do something, go see something, go, you know what I mean? Like lead them to her. So they followed him that whole day, but he didn't do anything weird. He just went to work, went to a bar, and went home. So at this point, with him not doing anything and him being under surveillance and not leading anywhere, her case went cold. This was a year into the investigation. Now, in the meantime, the searches for Becky had continued with dozens of local searches conducted by her family, friends, and even her boyfriend Rob. And Becky's mother Diane, they had ground searches and helicopters going. Becky's family and friends even organized their own task force, and police recognized and allowed them to do that. They would like help follow up on leads and provide any resources that they could to help. Police talked to all of Becky's closest friends, hoping that they might have some information on like things that maybe had been bothering her, places that she might want to go, things that she mentioned, just anything that could lead them anywhere where she might be, but they came up with nothing. Her family and her friends posted missing person flyers everywhere, in store windows, up on like street poles, just everywhere you could. The flyers went as far as places like Alaska, California, and Mexico. Like they were really getting her face out there. But months went by, a year went by, still no sign of Becky. Becky was described on her missing persons flyer as being 15 years old, standing at 5'6", weighing 125 pounds, with hazel eyes and short, dark brown hair. A reward fund was established to help, bring in tips on Becky, and her family and friends helped raise money for this rewards fund by having a rummage sale where they made and sold these little green ribbons in Becky's honor because green was her favorite color. And they were also hoping that by people buying and wearing these ribbons, it would remind locals that she was in fact still missing. Her birthday, November 3rd, her 16th birthday, came and went with her still missing. And then it was Christmas and presents were left under the tree, never unwrapped. Poor Diana, man, she now lost her teenage daughter and her boyfriend, who was a suspect by police. He literally just up and bailed. I cannot even imagine what was going through her head at that time. She was just constantly looking for Becky, constantly calling and bugging the cops for updates, and just making it her sole purpose in life now to find her daughter, because she really didn't believe that her daughter was dead. And I feel like we oftentimes see such polar opposites when it comes to these cases. You either have people who are just so immediately certain that their child is gone, and then you have the other people who are so certain that they aren't, because they're like, if they were to be gone, I would know it, I would feel it. And Diana fell into that category. She thought that if Becky had died, she would know it. And since she never felt that, she was just sitting there waiting for Becky to just walk back through the front door. Diana would just sit there and she would cry a lot. And she even, oh my God, She even went as far as changing the outgoing message on their answering machine in case Becky was to call and hear it. Okay, this answering machine said, in part, and I quote, "I'm going to tell you that no matter how hard life seems to be, you can always come home to be with me because I love you." That fucking destroys me. So in this mindset she was in, this desperate mindset at this point, all this time's going by and no answers are coming out, she decides, alongside the police actually, that it would be a good idea to bring in some psychics to try to figure out what might have happened to Becky, which is an unprecedented thing, but that's what they did. They were desperate, right? They just needed somewhere to start looking because they didn't have anywhere to go. There were no leads. So she met with several psychics. They met with several psychics, and they all told her the same thing, that her daughter was dead and would never be coming home. And I guess this was a weird thing for police to do. They didn't often, this police department didn't often work with psychics. It wasn't a common thing for them. But at this point, it had been a year and a half and they still had no answers. So they were just doing whatever they could to try to get something. Now, one particular psychic that they worked with on this case was a psychic that was from Florida who had worked with police on a different case. Now, I don't think it was this police department, but the police in general had worked with this particular psychic on another case before, and I believe had been successful. So they decided they want to work with her, and her name is Noreen. And so Noreen agrees to help, but she's in Florida, so she asks for some items of Becky's to be mailed to her so that she can focus on them and channel them and see what she can find out. So Becky's mom sends her over, I believe, a sock and a charm bracelet. And so Noreen takes these things out and she sits there with them and she starts trying to block everything out of her head. And at the same time, she's on the phone with Becky's mom and a police officer. And she's just going to tell them anything that pops into her head when channeling on Becky's items. I guess Noreen said a lot of things to Diana and to the officer that were personal to just Becky. And it was personal enough that Diana believed that the reading they were getting was accurate. And then she told Diana that she was so sorry, but that her daughter was dead and that she was in a place that had beautiful surroundings. I guess Noreen then drew a map. This was her way of trying to show the location to where Becky was. And she put Becky's location at 12 and then basically had other landmarks at the other numbers on a clock. And she mentioned 2 airports, she mentioned train tracks, and she mentioned other landmarks and distinguishing features that would be in the area. She said that Becky was near water, but not in water. And she said that she could see that Becky had went to meet someone and that something had gone wrong and that she was hurt. And this part is really whew. She said that she could see Becky. Ooh, I got chills immediately because I know what's coming. She said she could see Becky lying there on the ground. And she said when she looked at Becky, she could see a fetus inside of her. And so at that point, she told them that she thought Becky was pregnant. And that's when the chills are going to get real oogie boogie chills, because there was no way at this point that she could have known that Becky was pregnant. This wasn't common knowledge. This wasn't something that was released. This is something that we know now, but the people didn't know then. The psychic went on to say that she kept getting the letter L over and over in her head, and she believed this to be an initial. And she then said that she could actually see the person that had hurt Becky, and she sat down with a sketch artist and had the sketch drawn out. And when police saw this sketch and looked at it through the lens of the letter L, they realized that this looked like someone who had an initial L that was related in some way to Becky. But we will get there. Police took this psychic's information a little more seriously than you would expect one to take a psychic's information, depending on what you believe, if you believe in psychics, if you believe in all of that stuff. But police did take it seriously, and they actually went and did searches based on all the landmarks that Noreen gave them. But again, they still didn't find Becky. Now, 2 years went by. 2 years, and all of the leads had dried up. Every lead had been followed, even sightings of Becky in other states or young girls in motels who may have been Becky. Tips that Becky had run off to start a new life with some ex-con, that she had gotten strung out on drugs and was living on the street. Just, all the wild shit that comes out in cases like this. People claimed to have seen her in a Walmart, saw her in a window of some random house. Someone said that Becky had been beaten up by some girl in some restaurant, and her friend Jackie just called all of these tips a flurry of madness. Police looked into sex offenders in both Michigan and Indiana. Yes, 2 states, that's 2 Michigan, Indiana, 1, 2. Yes, 2. They looked at sex offenders in 2 states because of how close Niles was to the Indiana border. Even though I did hear somewhere or read somewhere that like it's very rarely actually a registered sex offender when things like this happen. I don't know if that's accurate. Don't quote me on this, but that's something that I heard. They also looked at people who worked in the school that Becky went to. They looked at homeless people. Their search, their like suspect list, their interest point. Sure, the net they were casting was large, is basically what I'm saying. It was large, but it was unsuccessful. They did have one close call during the investigation, though. During the time that Becky was missing, they got a report that some bones had been found. So police went, they recovered the bones and any evidence around the bones that could lead them to Becky. If this did turn out to be Becky, they were taking it very seriously. But when they tested the bones, they found that they were animal bones. And it was later determined that some farmer, his dog had died and he had buried the dog there. But they were like really stoked for a second and then really let down. Now, the case, cold as ice, right? Well, you know, it's never like cold, but it's cooled. It gets cold. Anyway, the case is cold. That was until a day in October of 1995 when police received a call. They received a call from a woman who said she had information on what happened to Becky Stowe. And not some vague ass information like they had received before. She was saying she had the full ass story of what happened to Becky. This woman's name was Angela, and Angela said that she knew what happened to Becky and she knew where Becky could be found. She said that Becky was buried on a farm, a local farm that was often used by local teenagers to have parties. Angela said that Becky could be found near a tree line by a lake and that her grave was concealed under a large woodpile. Angela said she knew all of this because her boyfriend had told her. Her boyfriend had told her that he had murdered Becky Stowe after learning that she was pregnant and refused to get an abortion. This boyfriend's name was Robert Eugene Lehman III. And you know what? I guess two-parters are kind of my thing now because that is where we're going to stop. And I'm going to tell you the rest of the story next Monday. Again, this is one of those cases where there's just so much information from what Robert says happened to his trial, his sentencing, or his sentencings. We're going to get there. It's just a lot to cover, so I thought I'd break it up right here to make it more palatable for most people. I don't think two-parters are going to be a thing I do often. It's just these last 2 cases have had so much information that, well, it's not the last 2 cases. There's videos going up between them, so just know that two-parters probably aren't going to be like an all-the-time thing. But if the case lends itself to needing 2 parts, I'm going to have to do it. Like sometimes they're just complex and there's a lot to discuss, and that's how it is in one of these cases, in this case in particular. So we're going to pick that up next week. We're going to talk about what police think happened, what Robert says happened, and the conclusion of this case, which is going to be upsetting, particularly for Becky's family. It was very upsetting. I actually did speak to the person who runs her Facebook page in preparation for doing this video, and everyone's pretty unhappy with how this ends up turning out, but you'll learn all about that next Monday. And now, considering everything I've told you so far in this video, obviously you'll get more information in part 2, I want you to answer the question today, and that is this. What do you think was the motive for Becky Stowe's murder? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. With that said, that, my friends, is the first half of the story of the murder of Becky Stowe. I hope you found it interesting and informative, and it gave you all the information you would want so far when looking into this case. And of course, I want to thank you for remembering Becky with me today. Please don't forget to let me know what cases you'd like to see me cover down below in the comment section. As this case indicates, if you leave me a suggestion, I like to add it to my list so I can look into it, because I know you're filled with good ideas and good taste. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And I like to put your name on the list so that I can give you a shout out if I cover it, like I did with Ayla here. And I particularly have really been enjoying covering your local cases because oftentimes they're cases I've never heard of that need more coverage. If you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing the bell. I put out a new video every single week and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you specifically, you. And if you want to hang out more consistently, all my social media is listed down below. What's also down there? A link to my merch store. This isn't my merch, this is my friend Mike's merch. There's also a link to my membership if you want to join. It gives you early access to videos. It also gives you polls, live streams, things like that. You can check that all out down below. I just want to say one more thank you to Ana Luisa Jewelry for partnering with me on today's video. It's just rad that companies want to work with me and help me be able to do this as often as I do. And of course, I want to thank you guys for always being so supportive of my sponsors. You rock. Don't ever change. And now with all of that said, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That is tight. you are tight. Please stay safe and be a better person than you were yesterday, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.